I'm Luke Beard.
I'm Kris.
I'm Gunter.
And I'm Nash, Rainey.
And we are
the Backups.
All right, let's kick into things. We had the FIBA World Cup going on. So United States had a big upsetting loss against Lithuania, came back against Italy, and just smoked them, 37-point, 100-63. What do you have to say about that?
Just a solid, really good USA win, the kind of thing that you want to see after they take a loss to a team like Lithuania, kind of reminding everyone that the United States doesn't really lose that often, and that's how we should be playing. So
yeah, just USA doing USA things.
Yeah, it's just nice to see us bounce back.
Yeah.
In Lithuania's fallout against Serbia, they did not look very good in that game. They're no longer in medal contention. So we'll see the United States either face Slovenia or Germany, I do believe, or my apologies, Latvia or Germany. And we will see Serbia face either Canada or Slovenia to go to the finals. I'm expecting a Slovenia-USA matchup. I think Slovenia does a really good job at team basketball. They are a really strong team, a really good Eastern European basketball team. It seems like those countries have more frequently dominated international basketball. I mean, what do y'all expect to see?
I mean, it's a little boring to say it, but I think that's probably what it is, where you're going to have the USA, who is the team in world basketball and always has been, playing against just one of the European teams that has a few NBA players, and then just a team that's been playing together forever. So they have a really good chemistry. I don't imagine any of the other teams are going to be an upset and be in that final game.
I will say, I think Canada has a chance to make it. I think they're a really strong team, and I'm a fan of how they play. But I just don't see them getting to the level that Slovenia's been able to play at recently.
Yeah.
So let's move on to college football. We watched a lot of college football this weekend. I think from 12 o'clock Saturday to whenever that last game ended. Yeah, it was a long day of football. And we watched the Tuesday night games, the Friday night game, or the Thursday night games, the Friday night games. So much football. I can't even think of when we watched it now. But we watched every single day of football. Started off with a big Utah win against Florida. They looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you see these Florida players come in and they think they have an easy win against Utah. Then Utah comes out very
unserious.
And this was a Utah team without their starting quarterback, too.
Yeah, it proved just how complete that roster is, where they don't even have the starting quarterback, and they're going out and they're beating. I mean, Florida isn't a fantastic team. They're not very good. I know Kris was a big AR-15 fan, so losing them was tough for their roster, and obviously, but Utah just showed what they needed to show. They played a big program, they played well, and they got the win. And that's all you can really ask for of your opening game.
Yeah, and you mentioned losing Anthony Richardson. He has a huge arm. Mm-hmm. He wasn't the best quarterback in college. However, he has so much potential that it's hard to really talk bad about him. But I still feel like they have a really competent quarterback. I think Graham Mertz is a really good player. I thought he was good when he was at Wisconsin. However, I just feel like Florida, they lost their identity that they had at one point.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, they've been a team that's fallen more recently than they have come back through the ashes. But I still think they have a chance, probably not this year, but in the coming years, to be really good. So, I mean, but it wasn't a great showing by the SEC in general anyway this weekend when they're playing out-of-conference opponents.
Yeah.
UNC beating South Carolina win a game that the score is much closer than the game actually seemed to be.
Yeah.
I still think South Carolina does have a really good program. I think they're a really strong team. That offensive line is just, you're not going to cut it with that kind of offensive line. Right. If you let UNC get 8 sacks, that's a problem.
Yeah, especially when you have to play bigger programs later in the year. That is not the team that should be getting 8 sacks.
And you have to play SEC defenses that have these massive guys who are just monsters on the D-line. And UNC has a great D-line, don't get me wrong. But if you see them face an SEC team like South Carolina, and they do that to that South Carolina team, I'm worried about what they'll do to other teams in the ACC, because I think this UNC team could be really good. It's going to be them, it's going to be Florida State going down to the wire, potentially for a playoff spot. But seeing how Florida State beat LSU, that was a game where Florida State dominated. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a slow first half for both teams. As soon as they came out of the half, though, Florida State. Yeah. And LSU could not adjust. They were keeping their secondary and their front seven 5 yards apart at all times, or Florida State would get these chunk 10-yard plays whenever they wanted to. It felt like it was at will. And the lack of adjustments and the skill on that Florida State team really throws off a team for like an LSU who still has a coach in his second year at the team.
Yeah.
He hasn't been there long. He's a great coach. We've seen him win big games, but he's been there for a short time. So they have a really talented team. Jaden Daniels is an amazing player, but they can't get it together.
Yeah.
It feels like they've lost their last 4 openings. It feels like they open the season slow and they slowly progress in the season, and then they hit that bump in the road at the end of the season where they're not quite going to reach the playoffs.
Yeah, like that.
And I feel like
one more piece, and then.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was like against Georgia in the SEC title. They did great after they lost to Florida State.
Yeah.
They lost early. They beat Bama about midway through the season, and then they hit Georgia. And obviously Georgia last year was
Unbeatable, yeah.
Yeah, that was like hitting Hercules. You're not going to beat that. That was a David-Goliath matchup anytime they fought anybody, and Goliath dominated. But
also Florida State, I mean, Jordan Travis did put up Heisman numbers, throwing 23 for 31 and 342 yards. I mean, he's up there. He's going to be – that's a challenge going forward for any team that plays FSU. He's going to be a big problem.
And he had a top 5 quarterback showing, I feel like, this weekend. There's some other guys, Michael Penix Jr., for example.
Yeah.
This dude is unbelievable. He amazes me every time he plays football. He is so good, and Boise State is not a bad opponent.
Not at all.
They're not the team they once were. But Michael Penix, even last year, he just does things that just shock me.
Yeah.
He makes big plays all the time.
Yeah. No, that's what you want. You know, he's not not as high up in some of the Heisman conversations, but when you open your season like that, where you're just making big plays, obviously it's not against a big program, but he showed that he has kind of the arm and the decision making to kind of push himself into that conversation, which is what you want to do week 1, especially when you're not as highly considered.
And the dying Pac-12 made a huge statement this week that they are still a force to be reckoned with going into this year's college football playoffs, and then obviously expanding into the other conferences that are joining. These teams will be hard to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, USC looks great. Their defense looked much better this week, I thought. Caleb Williams is phenomenal. We knew that. He's the next big thing in NFL ball, at least, and he's the big thing in college ball right now. Colorado, I had my doubts coming into the season. I want to apologize to Coach Prime for that because he coached that team so well, and he got guys he knew he could win with.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You need a guy like that. I mean, Shedeur Sanders, 510 passing yards. He broke the Colorado school record in his first game.
In his first Power 5 game at that. First Power 5 game, so they thought, a lot of people that weren't familiar with his game, they thought, oh yeah, it's HBCU ball. It's not, the competition level isn't as good. Nah, it don't work like that. He came in there on the runner-ups from last year, 510 yards, 4 touchdowns on the team that just went to the national championship last year, even though they got beat badly, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's still the second best
that
football
is
if you
a
look at
ranked
it.
team where with a new head coach and basically a whole new roster coming in, and it was a away game for Colorado.
Right.
They weren't playing at home. They went to their stadium and played phenomenally. That's like I'll admit I wasn't high on this team, and they've completely proved me wrong.
It's just got to put an apology to Colorado. I'm sorry I wasn't familiar with their game, and then especially Travis Hunter. He's something else. I mean, when I saw his Heisman rankings, putting him first, and then Shedeur at second, and then Caleb Williams, I'm like, that's crazy. That's a fair statement.
Yeah,
I'm glad he didn't come to Florida State. I'm glad he didn't go.
Yeah, that would have been an issue. And we talk about those two guys. We talk about Shedeur and we talk about Travis Hunter. Dylan Edwards,
Yeah, he went.
a true freshman running back, had 4 touchdowns in his first game of college ball. 135 receiving yards off of 5 receptions. That is insane.
Yeah.
No one's giving him the credit he deserves.
Yeah,
Because
he's unsung hero.
he currently, to me, is a top 4 or 5 guy in the Heisman race already. Because you don't see stuff like that out of a true freshman running back very often. And I feel like Colorado has 3 guys who could be in New York at the end of the year at the Heisman ceremony. I feel like
Wouldn't be surprised.
that team is they're going to be unstoppable if they can get their
keep
defense
winning,
together a little bit.
Yeah, they get the defense together and they keep winning. Yeah, they're going to be a problem.
And I trust Deion Sanders to be able to keep a defense together. We saw what he did in the pros, and I think he has some tenacity to him, and he knows how to get players to be dogs. I mean,
Yeah.
he knows how to get players to play at their full potential, at their highest level. So I'm big on Colorado now. And Wyoming, huge win over Texas Tech, 37-35 overtime game. They looked very good.
Yeah, that's what it was the kind of thing where they weren't really seen as a team that could beat Texas Tech, but they did everything right. They performed well, and they managed to pull off a pretty big upset win in their home stadium in Laramie. And it's one of those things where a 37-35 OT victory for a team like Wyoming, that's one of the best things about college football. Like a small school in the middle of nowhere, some state halfway across the country, taking on this big historic program just because they were the better team that day. You love to see stuff like that.
And Texas Tech was pretty much a dark horse this year going into the Big 12. They're making moves in the offseason, but now that's gone. I just don't see it happening anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's still early on, but losing like that in your first game is not what you want to do if you're trying to win the Big 12.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people super excited for this Texas Tech team, and I didn't quite get the hype myself. When I did my rankings, I did not put them in it. I think they could still be a very good team. I do see the potential they have. They have a lot of guys who could break out into stars. However, I just personally don't see that happening this year. I feel like a loss to Wyoming really kills a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
But I think Wyoming could also just be a really good team. Like, they could end up in the top 25 at the end of the year. Saw Josh Allen messing with Patrick Mahomes on Twitter because, obviously, Josh Allen, Wyoming, Mahomes, Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to see things like that, too, see how NFL stars react to stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we also saw Ohio State does not look amazing. They're not the team I thought they were.
I think I agree. They didn't look as good as I thought they were going to be, but I think that's just kind of a staple of Big Ten football. Like, the first half, whatever school will look a bit scary, and they'll look like they're competing, and then you're Ohio State, you're Michigan, they make the adjustments, and then the second half they just run away with it. And I think you see that a lot in Big Ten football. Like, they like to trick you into thinking that like maybe something's going to happen. I do agree. But I think this is not. I think this is going to be like a footnote in Ohio State.
I think just a lot of people underestimated Indiana's football program. I mean, I expected it to be a blowout from Ohio State, but they kept it close for a while.
Yeah.
I also think that Ohio State, they're still unsure who their quarterback is. That causes a lot of issues for a program because if you don't have a guy who's confident that he can be the starter for the remainder of the year, it's going to be hard to win.
Yeah, the quarterback not confident, the team not confident.
Exactly. I thought Michigan looked pretty good without Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
I thought they looked pretty good without him. They were able to perform. Obviously, they didn't play anyone fantastic.
To be fair, his 4 weeks of his probation, they don't play anyone that.
And I believe they cut it down to 3, too. I think it's now university-enforced suspension instead of an NCAA-enforced suspension. It fell through or something.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just, I think they looked good. Obviously, they didn't play any huge program, and they're expected to be, a national title contender. But I still think they were able to adjust without their head coach. They did a little tribute to him at the beginning of the game. They lined up in the line, held up the fours, and then broke into a play. Seemed to work well.
I mean, it worked well, but I feel like that's kind of it felt. I mean, I get why, but it feels a little silly where players are coming in with a free Harbaugh and they're like putting up the fours like he's a political prisoner, and then it's the university taking him out for 3 games against nobodies.
It's a university-enforced suspension.
I was like, let's take a step back and realize what is actually going on.
Yeah, no team got a coach where you need to be doing all that.
Yeah, it's not that deep. It really isn't.
Let's move on to the Clemson versus Duke game. What a fun watch that was for us, huh? We saw Clemson get obliterated. There's no easy way of putting that. I still have a lot of hope for the program. A 28-7 loss to Duke hurts a lot, but there's a lot of bright spots. I thought that Clemson looked good on offense until they hit the red zone, and a lot of problems started there, and you can't have that kind of issue going throughout the season. I think this Duke team is actually a lot better than we anticipated as well.
Yeah.
I had them ranked 25 starting the year, and I think they proved themselves as a solid top 25 program. Clemson's first loss in program history with a 200-yard passing and 200-yard rushing game, and they still lost that game. Like, they're some ridiculous. They're 108-0 before that game if they put up 200 passing, 200 rushing yards, and then they lost that one. And it hurts to see that you fumble inside the 5-yard line twice. one of them on a missed handoff, and the other one you run into your O-lineman.
Yeah,
And that feels like mistakes that just have to be cleaned up. You can't go into a game as high as Clemson was going into that game. I feel like they were very confident in that game, which is good. You want to have confidence, but you can't feel like you're facing an inferior opponent ever, because college football will do that to you.
Yeah.
They completely.
I think another big thing is our O-line just needs to be a lot better, because pocket closes in and it gets in Cade's head, and it's obvious. It happened against Tennessee too.
He kept running. He got to start running the wrong way.
I mean, he's still a young quarterback. I mean, sophomore year, he played last season, but not as much, So I still consider him maybe as like a freshman type quarterback, but
even then,
he's just disappointing.
Yeah. And Clemson's missing field goals. They're turning the ball over on downs. I can't feel like I can blame Cade on this, but he slid a little early, and there's that confusing call with the targeting. Was it targeting, late hit? I'm still not exactly sure what that was about. I'm not a referee. It was a dead ball foul, so it is the correct call if it is called a dead ball foul.
That play's just tough to watch, because I think if you look back at our past few quarterbacks, Taj Boyd, Deshaun Watson, Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence, I feel like all of them are pushing for that first down in that moment.
All of them would have won the game, if I'm being honest.
And I also feel like Cade thought he had it. The position he was in, if you look over at the sidelines, he was very close to getting to it. So I can't completely talk down on him on that. It happens. You make bad judgments sometimes. Everyone does it. But sometimes you need to put your body on the line, is how I feel about a lot of things. You just got to go for it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. It happens in life, but you might as well go for it.
Yeah, no, this is the kind of loss where it just hurts. I was angry, I was sad, I woke up and I debated going to class, still did though, obviously, because I'm a good student, but it was not fun to get out of bed, and then, I get ready for the day, I check Twitter, and every post is about how the Clemson Tigers are, this embarrassment of a program, and the dynasty's over, and, you see all these memes and these posts, and it's frustrating, and you're like, that is the kind of game that you tell people about watching 30 years after the fact, because it was that bad.
It's now getting to the point where not so much that firing Dabo is the option, but it needs to be an option. He's not evolving with the
Put him
game.
in the hot seat.
The transfer portal is in, and we're not using it. And if we don't adapt, we're not going to be the same
I'm sorry to cut
program.
you off, but Dabo, get in that portal. Get in the portal. The game changing. It's time to get in the portal, man.
All caps, bold letters.
Yeah.
Get in the portal.
It's less of a fire Dabo, more of a get him to adapt, because I still think he could be a good coach. But we've been calling the same offense for 11 years now, where it's bubble screen on
A long
third and eights, and it's run the football for the first two plays or the first two downs. We don't throw the ball over the middle very much. When we threw it towards the middle right side of the field, we were very efficient. Any ball to the right side of the field was very efficient.
Yeah.
Cade looked really good throwing to his right. To his left wasn't as efficient, but he still looked fine. But I saw a breakdown of the passing earlier. We had a ridiculous amount of passes behind the line. I think it was somewhere near like 17 passes behind the line. And I don't think I've ever seen a football team do that and win a game.
Ever.
Yeah, it's just.
It feels like watching Clemson football is watching a triple option program.
Yeah.
But instead of running triple option, we just run the screen. And it feels like that's our motto now, is run the screen. And I'm not positive, but I couldn't seem to think that Garrett Riley had full control of the playbook yet. And it's hard to put full control into a guy who's at his first year with the program.
Yeah.
But you're also hiring him to be your guy.
Be the guy
Yeah.
who kind of revamps. Yeah, that was, it's just frustrating too, because it's not that we don't know the issue here. It's not that there's some unknown reason why we aren't succeeding as much as we did. It's just we have a stubborn head coach who doesn't want to fully embrace NIL as some other schools have, or it doesn't want to get in the portal. And some of these hires for coaching and certain position players haven't really been the right decision. It's just Dabo's a very good coach, but at the same time, he's kind of an old game coach.
Yeah.
The game has changed. It is not 2015. You can't be doing what you were doing 8 years ago. These other schools, when they have an issue, they can spend one offseason, pick up a transfer, and get better. You look at Georgia. Georgia was one of the best teams in football. They picked up Mizzou's #1 wide receiver.
And that'll help him in the long
better
run.
teams,
He's a very good player.
better teams don't just stay where they are. They keep
get better.
improving. They do
get
what
better
they
no
need to
matter
do to keep improving. And Clemson, not even to be a national contender, just to be, a 10-win, 11-win program, something needs to change.
It's like we have used the portal, but it's for a grad student quarterback who will probably never see playing time at all this
He's
season.
not getting on the field.
And I understand wanting to have a veteran quarterback in the room and be like, try to teach the younger
They're going to
guys.
use him as a coach, though. They're not going to use him as a quarterback. He feels like a coach hire that he's just going to be a grad assistant at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know about Charlie. This feels like shades of Bobby Bowden, where he was very well respected for a long majority of his run. And slowly towards the end, people started to turn on him, and then people kept turning on him, and eventually everyone was like, I'm fed up with it. We're not adapting to the game. And we had a young Dabo Swinney come in and take over. And I hope that's not the case to happen now.
Yeah.
I hope Dabo can adapt to it. I think he will adapt to it after seeing how that played out. I feel like he's heard what people have said, and he realizes like he does need to adapt. Because I feel like Clemson is a program a lot of people would like to play for.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a team that people know the history behind it. They've seen the recent successes, and they want to play for Clemson. You see teams like that grow more rapidly recently. Georgia is very similar to me to Clemson, as they were a team that had historically good programs in the 80s, and they had a little bit of a slump, and then they came back hard in the 2000s, 2010s area.
Yeah.
And obviously Georgia are very attractive now. I feel like Clemson can still be that way if we just open ourselves up and get more liberal with what we're doing instead of staying conservative and not adapting to the game.
Yeah.
That's
Just
how I
one more
see it.
positive light. I will say our defense did look
Yeah.
pretty good. I mean, the only disappointing thing was no one broke through the O-line. No sacks at all this game.
And another problem I had with the defense, sorry to cut you off again, but the tackling just was not.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best.
It's like Riley Leonard's rushing touchdown at the beginning of the quarter. There is no way he should have been able to
Yeah,
have
that
that.
shouldn't have happened.
I think it was like 2 missed tackles. And these are good linebackers. People say the best in the nation, and then
We can't miss tackles like that.
Yeah.
it's just disappointing to see.
All right, I think we're all tired of talking about that. Let's cut to the NFL preview. We have a fun slate of games coming up. We have Lions Chiefs Thursday night. I don't think Travis Kelce will end up playing. He hyperextended his knee.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely that he'll end up playing. But if he does play, I think they have I think they're going to win.
Yeah.
Let me just start there. It's so hard to beat the Chiefs, but without their top playmaker, I'm really high on the Lions this year. I think they could be very good. And I know it's very cliche. Everyone's high on the Lions this year. But I think they could be a good team. They have shown promise. They've upgraded in the offseason. And I think Dan Campbell is a fantastic coach. I think players like to play for Dan Campbell. Players want to play for Dan Campbell. And if I was a player, he, to me, right now, is one of the most attractive coaches in the league to play for because he cares about his players.
Yeah.
He cares about coaching. He cares about winning. But he also cares about his players. And I feel like that's very obvious. Andy Reid is a similar way, though. And I've never heard a bad story about Andy Reid because he cares about the guys he plays for. Kris, I know you're going to have a lot to say about that Lions thing, so I'll let you go ahead with it.
You say people high on the Lions. A lot of people are high on the Lions, but I think we forget something, y'all. This the Lions. Have y'all ever seen the Lions be good? Or
A couple years ago. Or not a couple years ago, 10 years ago. With Stafford and Calvin Johnson.
the last time they was in the playoffs, I was in the 7th grade. I'm a sophomore in college now. That was the 7th grade. It was the last time they made the playoffs, and they got blown out.
That's fair. I think they've really upgraded their teams.
Yeah, they upgraded for sure. But
and they have.
Hey man, it's the Lions.
They have one of the best young running backs in football already. I think he's going to be super good. So I wouldn't worry about them being bad right now. They could end up, bamboozling me, but I don't think I'm going to be bamboozled. I think I'm confident on the Lions this season. We have Bengals, Browns. I'm just going to take the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm taking Bengals.
Yeah. Texans, Ravens. I think we're taking the Ravens. I think Stroud will have a good game, but I just don't think they have enough pieces yet.
Yeah.
But I think they're getting to that area where they can soon.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely, especially, they're getting better, but they're still where.
Yeah, they're constantly improving.
Yeah.
Bucks-Vikings is an interesting one to me because we've seen the Bucks dominate the NFC South for the last couple of years, and now they have lost so many people to retirement or they're just leaving. I've even seen Mike Evans might leave.
Yeah.
He's been there his whole career. So
Just if it were my team, I would not be too excited having either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask be my starting quarterback. I mean, I've never been too high on both of those players, so.
I still think Mayfield could do some stuff. I think he's a good quarterback still in the right situation, and I think this could end up being a good situation for him, but we'll see there. I'm going to take the Vikings. I'm super high on the Vikings this year as well. I think the NFC North has gotten better, and outside of the Packers, honestly,
I agree.
because they lose their MVP caliber quarterback. They lose a lot of stuff. I still think they could be good. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up being a 9-10-1 team, but without a guy like Rodgers, it's hard to get. It's hard to move from Rodgers to a guy who you haven't played much.
Yeah, I agree.
Panthers Falcons. I think that could be it'll be a fun game to watch.
Yeah.
It'll be a good game, I think.
Good as like goofy or from like entertainment.
Entertaining. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I feel like these teams, as a Falcons fan, we haven't played the best football recently, but I think we can return to that level again. I think Desmond Ridder has a shot to end up being a star. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did. I feel like he's a guy I'm very in between on. And I think the Panthers have done well drafting. They've gotten good young players. Bryce Young's a great player. I don't think Brian Burns is playing, which is a big hit to them because he's the best player in their defense.
Yeah.
And arguably one of the best defensive players in the league. So that'll hurt, but they do have a good young D-line. Derek Brown is a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
And I think their secondary is pretty good, also very young. It's a very young team. These are two young teams facing off that'll end up likely being the future of the NFC South.
Yeah.
I think Bijan Robinson will have a great game. I think Drake London will play fine. As a Panthers fan, what would you like to say about that?
I mean, it's been a tough few years as a Panthers fan, but, keep pounding. We did what we needed to do. We obviously what we gave up was terrible, but, we needed a franchise QB. We needed this revamp. And honestly, Bryce Young, new rookie quarterback, very successful in college. Some are saying, I've heard on the level of Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, maybe a little better. Maybe
now, can I ask if that's like just something you've heard in your head?
Yeah, I imagined it.
Yeah.
But I did hear it. And I think, Panthers-Falcons classic rivalry, I think this will I could see us winning this one, or maybe y'all winning this one, and then the other.
I think it'll go 1-1 this year.
1-1.
I don't know how it's going to go, but 1-1.
I want the Panthers to win. That's really all I can say about it.
Yeah. Cardinals, Commanders. I'm going to take the Commanders.
Yeah.
I think they're going to look good. Sam Howell is a quarterback I think is very good. He's a young guy too, and I just think he's a phenomenal player. So I'll go Commanders here.
That Cardinals team is terrible.
They're in a bad position.
They're in a bad spot. So.
Jags, Colts. I think the Jags are phenomenal again this year. They'll be very good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the Jags.
Mm-hmm.
Niners, Steelers. It's a case of the Steelers are super young, and the Niners are a mixture of young and veteran players, but they've done well with a really good head coach that I can't see them losing this game.
Yeah.
I think Brock Purdy will be fine. I don't have any.
I think it'll just be interesting to see him come back from the injury we saw in the NFC Championship.
I wouldn't be worried about him. I think he'll be okay.
I think he'll be okay.
Titans Saints is another game where it's like I could see it going both ways. I think the Saints will take it. Yeah. I'm high on the Saints this year as well. Yeah. I think they'll win the NFC South. I think Derek Carr's a very good player still, so I think they've done well building around him. I'll run through these real quick. Yeah. Raiders, Broncos. Who do we have?
I'm going to be honest, Broncos. I think.
Yeah, I take the Broncos.
I think they'll be better than. These are not really. This isn't really a big matchup, so I don't. This is one of the things where I can.
It can go either way.
It could go either way.
I'll go Broncos too. I think Sean Payton will be good there. Eagles, Pats.
Eagles. That is the most complete team in football. It's got to be the Eagles.
Rams, Seahawks. I think will be a good matchup, but I'm going to go Seahawks as well.
Seahawks. They had a really good year last year.
It'll be interesting seeing Matt Stafford bounce back. He said that he isn't really. It's not like he's not getting along with players, but he's not just. There's not much for them to talk about because he feels much older than they are. Yeah. So it's a little different for him nowadays. Dolphins, Chargers. This is a matchup I'm excited for because these are two teams that are loaded. These are two teams with great rosters. Jalen Ramsey's obviously out, which hurts the Dolphins' chances a little bit. Eli Apple is going to have to step up in this situation. And then the Dolphins, Chargers, there's obviously been disputes about who should have gone to or Justin Herbert. I still think people will still have those disputes after this year because to me they're very similar players.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They can both do a lot for you, but neither of them have really. I mean, 2 is the one who's made the playoffs.
Yeah.
I will say that. He didn't get to play in that game. However, he did make the playoffs.
I mean, the Chargers did too, and it's one of those things where they blew that big lead against the Jags last year, and that's where my doubt comes from because, I think Justin Herbert is good, and I think maybe the team around him isn't great, but, what does that say about you to blow a lead like that in a playoff game?
I still think Herbert will be, I think he'll be fine. I think these are both teams that'll be fringe playoffs or in the playoffs this season. Packers, Bears. I'm gonna take the Bears. I'm super high on Justin Fields. I think Jordan Love will be good, but
I'm never picking the Bears to beat us. I don't care what improvements they made this offseason. We go pack cheese heads, man. We winning.
I mean, we saw Jordan Love a little bit last season. I'm not entirely sold on him as a quarterback. I think he's decent, but
me neither. I'm not sold.
Justin Fields in my head.
And the Bears added DJ Moore. I think that's massive.
I mean, when you have a top 10 wide receiver like that, I mean, maybe top 3. I mean, my opinion.
I wouldn't go that high.
DJ Moore, that's the kind of weapon that Justin Fields needs.
Riley's Cowboys versus the New York Giants. Riley are
taking the Giants, even though I'm not a Cowboys fan whatsoever.
Whatever
but, I like Daniel Jones. I think he's a good quarterback. I liked how they played last season. It was, I would say, an improvement in the Giants organization last season. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch this year.
Well, if Riley's not going to pick his team, I'm not going to pick his team either. There's no reason for me to do that. I think the Giants are going to be very good. I think Daniel Jones, he can run the ball, which shocks me every time I see him run the ball. Because he's not bulky, but he has a bigger build, and he moves very well for that build. Yeah. And Saquon out of the backfield, they're going to be ridiculous. It's a great one, too, to have, just coming back there.
Well, that is 11-0 against the Giants as a starter, so I'm taking him to go 12-0.
I like the Cowboys' chances. I think they're still a pretty good team, and I think Dak especially, I think it'll be a close one, but I like the Cowboys.
I think that's another 2 fringe playoff teams.
Yeah.
So I think it could go either way. Same with Bills-Jets. I think the Jets have improved immensely. I mean, they look very good on paper. I'm going to go with the Bills because I have seen them play out before I've seen them pan out. However, I have seen them struggle in the first couple weeks.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think if the Bills start strong, they'll finish strong. Yeah. And I think the Jets will start strong. This will be a very good game, and I'm really excited to see it go down.
Yeah, especially, I mean, the Bills have been a very strong team for the past few years, and the Jets have revitalized so much in the past 2 years. I think I like the Bills more because, like you said, we've actually seen this team play at its status now, and I think that Josh Allen is really, that's a hard quarterback to bet against. Yeah. But I think it'll be a good game, and it could be a really good show of what we might see in the playoffs.
Yep. All right, let's get into overtime. Kris, now you want to talk about soccer?
Yeah, great performance by Liverpool this weekend. We picked up where we left off last week. Not the best performance for Darwin Nunez, but he set up Mo for a goal, so he played pretty well. Dominic did his thing, and I'm looking forward to beating Wolves next week.
And I'll jump in soccer. My team's Brighton. We had an embarrassing loss to West Ham a few weeks ago, 3-1, and we bounced back this weekend. Dominated Newcastle 3-1. Evan Ferguson, 18-year-old striker, scored a hat trick. I mean,
it's good to see young guys.
Can't get better than that.
Yeah.
Young guys just being able to do that, that's very big for a team like Brighton. I feel like they're emerging.
I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea tries to sign him in maybe like 2 years.
Yeah.
They still be trash.
So, I mean, going to the world of Formula One, Max Verstappen, for those who don't know, has been touted as probably, as of now, one of, if not the best drivers of all time. He's only 25 years old, and this past weekend he scored a historic 10th straight win, which in Formula One terms, that is completely unprecedented. That is 10 different weekends in different places all over the world where he's qualifying towards the front. There's no mechanical issues that take him out of the race. He drives well enough to finish well ahead of everyone else. It's a dominating performance. You don't really see this in any other sport because you never really see such a gap between one person and everyone else.
It feels like the most dominating thing we've seen in all of racing ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you see we've seen Georgia dominate, we've seen Chicago dominate, but like the Bulls, but Verstappen he's ridiculous. it's insane to see something like
Just
that.
anytime you talk about an F1 race, you're like, oh, who won? And you can just guess Verstappen, look it up. It's gonna be Verstappen.
Yeah. If you're a betting man, which I'm not, I'm putting the bank on Max Verstappen. I'm gonna talk about The Waterboy a little bit. It is possibly my favorite movie ever.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler, a great actor. Me and Riley actually got to see him live last year. I don't know what all I need to say about it. I mean, I feel like everyone at the table's seen
Great
it.
movie, yeah.
Everyone's
Great
a
movie.
big fan of it. You see Captain Insano in there, one of the most mesmerizing people in all of fiction. I mean, just one of the greatest characters I've ever seen. Bobby Boucher is the greatest character I've seen in all of fiction. So, is that banana good? I'm sorry I have to point it out.
You went to town on it.
You pulled it out like you're a...
I mean, this is a sports show, so I'll just talk about that. You know, Waterboy, it's a classic sports movie. You know, it's hilarious, and it's just a, you know, when you think about sports movies, you think about Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of the best.
If you think about sports movies in general, I feel like Adam Sandler has 3 of the 10 best. I mean, you have The Waterboy, The Longest Yard, Happy Gilmore.
And then if you want to consider Uncut Gems.
Yeah, Uncut Gems is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like Adam Sandler just dominates the board when it comes to sports movies, and he has finished the banana since I started that topic to finishing it. He is like a minion. He just dominated a banana. I think that's all we have for today. We will see y'all next week. Anything else you have to say?
No.
It was a good banana.
How many bananas out of 10?
I'm gonna give it 9.
9 out of 10 bananas. Thank y'all for watching. We'll see you next week.